The Israeli occupation began releasing the first knock of the female prisoners, mostly to the West Bank. And despite Israeli attempts and psychological terror used against the families of the prisoners and the prisoners themselves who were about to be released, and I will be talking about their testimonials that are shocking in a minute, the Palestinians still celebrated. So we had images and videos coming up from the West Bank of people waiting for the prisoners, although Israel delayed the release up until the late night hours to get the prisoners out. They were moved from one place to another. Yet despite all of that, the many hundreds of the Palestinians were still waiting for them, if not thousands, cheering for the Palestinian resistance and welcoming their long-awaited prisoners after their release. These female prisoners, they had multiple statements. One of these females is called Janine AMU. Janine AMU is from Hebron, Al-Khalil, and she was imprisoned, basically kidnapped for 14 months without any charges. She was simply kidnapped from her home. She's a university student, and she was taken without anyone telling her what or why did they imprison her for. And she described a couple of shocking things from her experience. She said that some female prisoners, firstly, haven't been released and they are awaiting their release from Gaza. One woman and her daughter, alongside a few others who haven't been released yet. Hamas, from their account, said one of the female prisoners hasn't been released yet, and they are waiting. It could potentially happen in the second knock because there are multiple knocks every single week. She described the treatment in Israeli prisons as awful. She said the security forces in the prison were pulling them by the hair from one place to another. Some of the women were falling, including elderly. Some of them had to crawl. They used to curse at them, swore at them. They let them sit on the floor when they were waiting. She said they had no reason to arrest me in the first place. I don't know why they did. And there's an answer to that: administrative detention, what Israel uses to kidnap people and imprison them without any charge whatsoever. She said the security services contacted my family and told them, you cannot celebrate or be happy. Again, psychological terror used against these poor innocent women being imprisoned, kidnapped and imprisoned for nothing, without seeing their parents or their lawyers, especially after the genocide began. Imagine what kind of an ugly apartheid entity is this, forcing the people how to feel and what to feel. Imagine how insanely psychopathic this state is and this nation is. And when she was asked what she was planning to do after, she said, I simply want to continue my university studies because I just lost a year because I was imprisoned for no reason, basically kidnapping her for no reason whatsoever. Another woman who was released is actually a journalist called Rula Al-Hassanin. Rula Al-Hassanin is a journalist from Bethlehem. She was released and she was imprisoned initially. These are the moments where she was holding her young daughter, well, baby now. She was imprisoned when she had a newborn. And although she was relying on her mother, a newborn, she needs her mom, they imprisoned her. Why did they imprison her? Because she posted things against the genocide. She posted things online against the genocide. One of very many examples of how this apartheid state works. Dictating what people can think, dictating how people can feel, and imprisoning anyone that can, that has the audacity to criticize them and criticize what they do. Another one of those females who were released is called Dania HANACHI. Dania HANACHI, she was released from Israeli prisons. What did she say? She said they used to punish us for everything. If we are 1 minute late in the toilets or in the shower, we used to punish us by not allowing us to go the next day. Go the next day to the toilets, and sometimes just for a break, a 1 hour break. The prison cells were very tight. And I also had, there was a mother from Gaza and her daughter with me. And another one of these prisoners who was released, she said that they used to tell them when they were releasing them, you're not leaving in victory, you're leaving with destruction. Don't think you won. She said they were not receiving any visits from lawyers. They used to cut all communication from the outside world. And the only way they could obtain any information about what's happening, like when it comes to the war, is there any potential for them to be released, that they used to have to wait for some of the prisoners to go to court, potentially speak to someone, and come back. Another one said they used to strip search us. They used to strip search us. And they used to pull us by the hair when they were strip searching us without any need. Now that's blatant state-sponsored sexual abuse. Stripping someone without any requirement, no security need for it. They're coming from solitary confinement, some of them, many of them actually, when they hardly have any clothes on anyway. They're given what the prisons give them to wear. And they have the technology to detect everything. Why do you need to strip search them and abuse them and humiliate them? And the woman who said that, Daniel HANACHI, she actually didn't intend to say it. She was only saying it after she was asked by the journalist who was speaking with her, like, what do you mean by harsh treatment? What they exactly do? They were not comfortable in speaking about it, but eventually they did. It shows you the level of brutality and abuse these poor innocent women have been suffering in these Israeli prisons, let alone the men with confirmed reports of rape, some of them raped to death, like one of the senior doctors in Gaza who was raped to death alongside another prisoner too. And then these rapists went to Israeli media and they were hailed as heroes for having all of these atrocities against the poor Palestinian prisoners kidnapped by Israel. Moving on to the ceasefire. Israel had at least 2 breaches of the ceasefire. Reports in Gaza confirmed that 2 people were killed in the area of Rafah. A 15-year-old boy was recorded to be shot to death for no reason whatsoever. And Israel again shot the man who was trying to rescue him. Other reports said more, but the confirmed reports coming from the Ministry of Health in Gaza, they actually said 1 and another one who was critically wounded in a blatant breach of the ceasefire. Is this a step of Israel to test the waters and check if they can get away with more brutality? We're not sure. However, what's for sure is they have many more prisoners of war to be released, and that can jeopardize their release. As a matter of fact, the Sarai al-Quds movement, the armed wing of the PIJ, they told them, your actions in Gaza would be dictating how your prisoners of war would be released, either as bodies or alive. Now, Israel yesterday, the Palestinian resistance released 2 of the alive Israeli female prisoners. They were supposed to release another body, but they did not release that body. Why? The family of that woman said, that Israel killed, by the way, said Netanyahu did not want to release the body so that he doesn't affect the image of victory. What else happened instead? All of a sudden, Israel declares that they somehow in this magical operation found the body of Oron Shaul, who was kidnapped by the Palestinian resistance, a soldier, in 2014. they rescued his body. That was clearly a deal between them and Hamas that they did not speak a lot about, so that they can make up the number. But Netanyahu didn't want one of the current actual kidnapped Israelis to be released as a body. He didn't want to take that hit. But the Israelis spinned it in a way to show it as if it's like a heroic evacuation. Such liars. In the meantime, more things are being revealed when it comes to Jabalia and the places that the Palestinians are returning to. The first thing is the rescue services in Gaza. They declare today that they have now found 137 bodies from Rafah since the beginning of the implementation of the ceasefire. That excludes other parts of Gaza. So we're starting to talk about big numbers. And when we say bodies, decomposed bodies, burnt bodies, parts of bodies, people having to look at clothing to try and identify bodies from the streets that were eaten by stray dogs and cats. Israel left them there deliberately so that they can decompose. The levels of barbarism of this country are beyond imagination, and now their crimes are being revealed even more. Now, when it comes to Jabalia, by the way, this is how Jabalia looks like. This is how Jabalia looks like now, or at least a very significant part of Jabalia. This is how it looks like, yet the people are going back. People are going back. This is how Jabalia looks like. Look at this. Look at this destruction. This is a result of not only Israel, the genocide state, the genocide terror state, but also all of the countries that supported this genocide state. All of the politicians, online figures, everyone in the media who supported this state of terror, everyone who was silent against this genocide, they're all responsible. But the primary ones responsible are, of course, those who implemented it. The terror state, Israel, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Germany, and other European countries and their governments who supported this genocide outright and supported them with money and funding and everything that they needed. Despite confirmations that these are homes. These are not Hamas. Hamas, we saw them yesterday. They were in the streets of Gaza. Thousands of Palestinian fighters. These were the homes. The homes. Why? Because Israel was targeting the people. They wanted the people to go back so that they can feel there's nothing to return to, so they can lose hope. Yet, we're seeing again unbelievable things by the Palestinian people. Many of them are already taking off some of the rubble in their homes and very quickly putting a tent next to the home. And the Palestinian civil services are already working tirelessly with their very, very limited resources. And this was one of the videos that was published in Gaza today, with the civil services working to try and evacuate some of the rubble. You can't defeat people like that. People with such a strong will to live, such a long will to rebuild, immediately going back to their homes, immediately evacuating, despite, of course, the horror stories. One of these horror stories is a story of a man who went to Jabalia. He went to Jabalia to try and find the bodies of his family. They were in a home, 14 members of the family, and despite the fact that they told the Red Cross that we're here, the genocide entity targeted the place, collapsed it. His 2 children were killed, and his wife and 11 others of the family members. Now, when they got back, what did they see? They saw that Israel burnt the bodies of those who were under the rubble. Clearly, the Israeli forces were walking next to them. They heard them and they burnt them basically alive. The man brought body bags basically to put them in, his children, hoping that he can bury them, only to find that Israel burnt them under the rubble. Can you imagine anything more depraved than that? Anything lower than that? And this is just one story of this man hoping to come and take the bodies of his family members under the rubble again, by himself. Because the rescue service is limited. They're prioritizing opening the roads, getting the people water, electricity, and of course, evacuations too. But in some parts, of course, they can't do everything all at once, and this requires a lot of work. But what's important here is that the scenes that are coming from Gaza now are giving even more condemnation about this genocide entity and the crimes that they have committed in Gaza. Again, yet despite all of that, the people are still there. They are still doing their best to rebuild, and they're doing their best to go back to their homes. And despite that, you still have images like this of children celebrating and of people raising the Palestinian flag on top of their homes and trying to the best of their ability to return to normality again. The following thing that I wanted to talk to you about is things are escalating in the West Bank. Israel, they had an attack, some of their rabid squatting dogs of the West Bank. They were trying to attack certain places in the West Bank. And then the Palestinians, they killed one of them and wounded another. Then they went out and kidnapped 60 Palestinians from the West Bank. And they're saying now in Israel, we need to prepare for more escalation in the West Bank. We need to send more troops to the West Bank, because even some of these people who we will be releasing, they might actually have some sort of actions against us in the West Bank. So clearly, despite the fact that we have a ceasefire in Gaza, a ceasefire doesn't mean peace. It doesn't mean ending the problem. The problem is still there. Israel is the problem. You need to end Israel as a state. You need to end Israeli apartheid. You need to end Israeli supremacy. You need to end Israeli ethnocracy, Israeli genocide, Israeli psychopaths running the country. You need to end that regime and completely uproot Zionism and make it illegal. Because clearly in the past 15 months, we've seen that this is nothing but mass terror. It's been clear to everyone with a pair of eyes, really, who has been monitoring the Palestinian case. But in the past 15 months now, even if you're blind, you can see exactly what's happening inside of Gaza. Which leads me to the following point that I want to talk to you about. The inner problems begin. The inner battles, the inner wars, the civil war of the genocide maniacs. It's starting to escalate now, with people like Bezalel Smotrich launching a campaign to fire the IDF chief, Herzi Halevi. He's blaming everything on Herzi Halevi. You were in the government. Your prime minister is the one who gives orders. He's trying to run away from his responsibilities. And now he's actually admitting we lost, but we didn't lose the war. We lost in the battle, but we didn't lose the war. He's selling his base the idea that we are going to be returning to the war with full force after phase one. He firmly believes that. He's saying, I got guarantees from Netanyahu. How genuine is that? How genuine is he? Not very sure. You're talking about people who constantly talk too much as well. They lie more than they breathe in general. Itamar Ben-Gvir resigned from the government already, and Smotrich is trying to convince his base that I need to remain in the government to keep any sort of hope. You know, Netanyahu made a mistake, but I'm not going to resign because, you know, Itamar Ben-Gvir is egoistic and he left and now he has no responsibility. Whereas I am the person who is really concerned about the state of Israel. I want to remain here so I can, protect our country, so that I can ensure that we kill more children, slaughter more innocent civilians. I mean, some of the videos in Gaza were showing how the tanks were going over the ambulances and the fire rescue services. This is what this man wants: elimination, extermination. He blatantly talks about, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And he's hoping, or at least he's selling his base, that it's going to continue. He's trying to be as convincing as possible when it comes to his people. The following thing that I wanted to talk to you about is a member of his party, a member of Bezalel Smotrich's party, Orit Stro. Orit Stro is also criticizing the Israeli army. She's saying that the IDF is not implementing the cabinet decision to release terrorists. So she, alongside Smotrich, is saying basically, again, the same thing, blaming everything on the army. You're the government. The government, the prime minister in Israel, he is the one who makes the decisions. The army follows orders, follows the order of the political level. She's the political level. Smotrich is the political level. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister who gives the orders. Yet despite all of that, she's going all out against the Israeli army. She's somewhat representing something that Benjamin Netanyahu has as well, when it comes to criticizing Herzi Halevi and the Israeli army, trying to run away from the responsibilities. Netanyahu previously was security checking Herzi Halevi, the IDF chief of staff, before meeting him. Imagine the level of distrust between these people. He was worried that he was going to have any wires or, something to monitor the conversation, record it, and then leak it. And we've had many leaks when it comes to the Israeli cabinet meetings. So clearly the tensions between them internally are escalating. Some of those who remained in the Netanyahu government, like Smotrich and his party, are trying to sell it as something national, something patriotic. We need to stay there. However, he's not convincing many people. He's not convincing many people to a level where some of the right-wing followers who actually support him, they stop believing him. Media, when it comes to the right wing, is changing the tone. Is changing the tone when it comes to the whole campaign. And the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about is Donald Trump. Donald Trump had his inauguration today, but there was someone missing. Who was missing? Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu was missing. Not only he was missing, he actually wasn't invited. That was just over a week ago, this report. Netanyahu unlikely to attend Trump inauguration, hasn't had official invite, aide says. He did not receive an invite. Benjamin Netanyahu was not invited to the Trump inauguration. Now, some might say the US is trying to, not show that it's protecting a war criminal. Oh no, firstly, the United States administration, they're the biggest war criminals on earth, the biggest mass murderers. Netanyahu, in comparison to the United States establishment and other Western governments, he's like peanuts in comparison to what they killed with colonial times and with contemporary wars, the Iraq War, Afghanistan. But it's the fact that he has a problem with Netanyahu himself. Why? They invited Yoav Gallant. Yoav Gallant was in the United States after the issue of the arrest warrants. And Yoav Gallant is a wanted war criminal, like Benjamin Netanyahu, a wanted war criminal. But this is an indication that there are genuine tensions between Trump and Netanyahu. The fact that he released the video of Jeffrey Sachs calling Netanyahu a deep, dark SOB, his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, following that, threatening Netanyahu 1 week before the ceasefire and having an unfriendly conversation with him. Reports that swearing at him, threatening him, Totally. Clearly, there are certain tensions between the Trump administration and the Netanyahu administration, to a level where some are saying that Donald Trump actually wants to take down Netanyahu. There is no proof of Trump actually wanting to take down Netanyahu when it comes to his foreign policy, of course. But some of these moves, when it comes to the United States administration, the new administration from Trump, despite all of the statements supporting Israel and against the Palestinians and all of that, and abhorrent statements in many cases too, clearly they have done something. Now, that pressure, when it comes to the US, of course, and it's very important to remind people, wouldn't have been there without the persistence and perseverance of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance, and of course the supporting fronts for Palestine. However, Israel without the United States is nothing. And now we can clearly see some tensions between the administration in the United States and the genocide state of Israel.